and welcome to the AAHOA Educational Experience. I'm Chip Rogers, and this week we will continue our three-part discussion on the BP oil spill. Almost 2 years after this man-made disaster, the economic reverberations are being felt continually in the Gulf Coast and around the nation. Joining me again this week is Jay Patel. He is the chairman and CEO of LHS Properties. Jay, thanks for being with us. And next to him is Wes Farrell, who is the president of Farrell and Patel Attorneys at Law. Thank you, Wes. And Ricky Patel, who's a partner with Farrell and Patel Attorneys at Law. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And all three of you gentlemen have been involved at almost a day-to-day basis with the aftermath of this incredible disaster, man-made disaster, media-made disaster. I'm going to start with you, Jay. Just the economic impact of this is enormous. So here you are, you're a business owner, ready for a wonderful, this thing happened in March or April?
April
So
20th.
you're ready for middle of spring break, ready for a great summer season, and all of a sudden, way out in the middle of the Gulf Coast, where you can't see, there's oil just bubbling up by the thousands of barrels, and it begins to ruin your business.
Yep.
And this happened to hundreds of businesses, and how much is it worth?
Well, the U.S. Travel Association recently did a study, and they've impacted by saying over $23 billion in damages in the next 3 years. We felt the impact at the latter part of June when the oil spill happened. The first 4 to 6 weeks was just everybody on pins and needles. But when they were unsuccessful in capping the oil spill, that's when the cancellation started by the dozens and hundreds of them. People just realized, wow, this thing's not going to stop. It's going to get crazier. And all of a sudden, it just destroyed our season. Our season usually starts like late March. And coming into June, it was just devastated by that time. And hundreds and hundreds of people just realized this is not the place to go.
What was interesting is I had some friends, because we live not too far off the Gulf Coast, who decided to just brave it, and they went down there and got these incredible deals on a hotel room right on the beach. They said, it's beautiful down here. I don't know what everyone's worried about.
Right.
Now, you didn't know the environmental impact. I mean, people were wondering, there are oil particles in the water that are going to
Yes.
cause me health problems. But as far as the beaches were concerned, it didn't turn into the...
No.
Yeah.
No, we saw some tar balls coming ashore, but minimal. Unfortunately, the media focused on where the tar balls came in.
Right.
Louisiana, I think, was the biggest impact. Florida had some, but not as a blanket covered with the entire state with oil. But that's the perception people had in their minds. No matter where in Florida, just don't go to Florida. I mean, St.
Right.
Augustine really is nowhere near the oil spill. It's on the other side of the state. It's on the Atlantic coast. But they saw the effect because people just don't know where St. Augustine is compared to Pensacola, Florida, or Fort Myers.
So Wes, BP understands, wow, we got a big problem.
Sure.
Really big problem. Environmentally, we got a problem. And then it probably starts clicking to them. We're also going to have an economic problem here. What was their initial response?
I think their initial response was the typical major corporation response. I think there was a outcry from people who knew they were going to be affected. I mean, when you have a few gallons of oil spilled, when you have a small spill, people react. But when you have over 100 million gallons of oil coming into the ocean, I think that it creates almost a panic. People in the Gulf didn't know when the oil was going to come, where it was going to come, how it was going to affect them, and it's when you're talking about that much oil, it really did unquestionably have a significant impact. This is governed by the Oil Pollution Act, which was put into place after Exxon Valdez. And the government, along with BP, put into place the Gulf Coast Claims Facility, which they committed $20 billion to this facility, which was supposed to be independent, which can give money to people in the interim before the litigation and between the litigation, and hopefully settle claims. That's their goal.
And the difference, I guess, would be that with the Exxon Valdez, it happened. With Katrina, the storm happened. The next day, you wake up, beautiful weather outside, and the whole city is destroyed. But with this, it was continuing to happen. So I mean, it didn't just happen and stop day after day and week after week. The oil was continuing to flow. And so BP has their answer, but immediately, whenever there's a crisis, you have government officials who have to do something. What was the response of government? Was it good? Was it bad? Or?
So, once again, like any disaster, you'll see the government come in, you'll see media come in. As long as there's attention on this at that point, everyone wants to be in the limelight as if they're doing something. I believe the government did a good job in the beginning. However, the big problem was, like you stated, this wasn't a spill like the Exxon Valdez. You saw the ship, oil start spilling. We didn't know how much oil there was. We didn't know when it was going to stop. And about a week into it, it got really scary when high definition video was produced. Right. And that, you could actually see what was going on. And later on, NASA took pictures, and you could see, from the top, this was serious. When was this going to stop? The government, what they did was they tried to help as much as they could. But the people who are best equipped to help are the ones in the oil industry. All of the resources that were necessary to stop this were available. Were they used? No. Chip, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned before that cost-cutting measures have created these disasters. Right as the oil spill occurred, why was the technology implemented that had been used multiple times in Iraq? It's been tested. This isn't something that they just write down. They test this every year. If there's an oil spill, how do we prevent it? What type of chemicals do we use if we need to burn it off, if there's only so much? It took forever. And as long as it felt while we were watching that video, the animals and everyone else, you could see the effects of it. They just started dying off. They killed the wildlife out there and everything else.
Particularly in Louisiana, I think that's where you
Absolutely.
saw the most glaring examples. So then AAHOA gets involved because AAHOA recognizes, hey, it's our members probably more than anybody that are going to be impacted by this. And AAHOA is certainly not perfect, but I would argue that maybe AAHOA's response was quicker and better than the government's or BP's.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's true. Myself and Nash and a few others collectively got together because our properties were also impacted. And I believe that there's, just from our recollect, there's over 1,300 hotels that are affected within the oil spill just in the Gulf region that we know of that are affected by our members. In fact, there's several groups that are being represented. I believe the Farrell Patel Group, I believe you guys have the largest concentration of hotels. But we were instrumental in putting ourselves in front of Ken Feinberg and discussing what the steps were going to be to compensate the people that needed to be. I remember back in August, our first meeting, when this was just starting out, we proposed a methodology that Ken Feinberg should use, which was an average of 3 years and actual losses. Fortunately, he implemented it. He started using it. It was only late in October when the forensic accountants from Pricewaterhouse came in. They realized, whoa, what are we doing here? And they put a stop to it. But the original methodology that most of us got paid, I believe 45, 50 hotels had already gotten paid under that methodology, was designed by us and Mr. Feinberg. So we were instrumental in trying to get immediate relief, at least temporarily relief. As you know, there's over 500,000 people claiming they wanted to get paid. We were more concerned about hotels because the indirect impact to hotels is the jobs that we employ. When our businesses aren't doing well, we have to lay off our housekeepers and our front desk and our maintenance guys. And these individuals depend on us to keep them employed. So our first strategic goal was to try to get capital to make sure we can make our payroll through these hotels. And in the beginning stages, we were very successful.
We have a little less than 2 minutes to go in this segment. Wes, I want to talk about, he mentioned Ken Feinberg a couple of times. What is his role in this? How did he get put in that position to begin with?
Ken Feinberg is the head of the Gulf Coast Claims Facility, which is the $20 billion fund which was established by BP and the government to help pay people for their losses. Ken Feinberg's role, and he's the head of Feinberg Rosen, a law firm, and his role is to oversee the entire facility. In our capacity, we have met with Ken many times, and with AAHOA on occasions, and they have been very helpful. AAHOA has been at the forefront of making sure that the membership is properly protected. We have many experts that we utilize, and certainly AAHOA with their resources in terms of data and understanding of the hospitality industry is a great resource.
So Ken Feinberg is supposed to be the arbiter of handing out the money, making sure that the right people get the right money, that nobody who doesn't deserve it comes in and gets it, and the people who do deserve it actually get the money, right?
Exactly. And it's, keep in mind they're dealing with hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of claims of all different kinds, shrimpers, crabbers, longshoremen, people who are outside of the hospitality industry as well.
Right. All right, well, we've got to take a quick time out, but we're really just getting into this. Want to talk about what happens with the settlements and how you, as someone who may believe that you've been injured, can be compensated through this fund and the process for doing that. And we'll do that coming up right after the break. Welcome back to the AAHOA Educational Experience. I'm Chip Rogers. This week, my guests, Jay Patel, Wes Farrell, and Ricky Patel. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talking about the BP oil spill, and before we went to break, Wes was talking about Ken Feinberg. He's heading up this organization to take the $20 billion that was put up. Was all $20 billion from BP?
So the $20 billion has not been put into an escrow. It's pouring over into as they need it. The $20 billion initially is from BP, but then they'll be indemnified by the other 160 companies.
Right.
But getting back to what Wes Farrell stated about Ken Feinberg, I think it's very important that the audience knows about Ken Feinberg, as far as we know what position he was put in, but what was the work that was actually performed by Ken Feinberg? He was put in as a neutral arbitrator. However, there's been many concerns. Judge Barbier, who's actually overlooking the whole case, has actually stepped in and made sure that everyone knows that he is not a neutral arbitrator. Look at it like the legal system. Imagine there's a plaintiff, a defendant, and a judge. Ken Feinberg is supposed to be the judge. BP is the defendant, and our clients would be the plaintiffs. In our system, it would be equivalent to BP paying the judge in the middle of the case, because that's what's going on. Ken Feinberg is paid, I believe, $1.25 million. Is that correct, Jay?
Per month?
Per month.
Good work if you can get it.
Yeah, but here's the great part. He started off at $850,000 a month, and they said every 3 months we'll evaluate how you're doing. Well, the correlation, and I may be completely off on this, but the correlation's been the less checks that go out, the more bonuses our friend Ken Feinberg's getting. So as far as being a neutral arbitrator, I'm not sure. It was a very smart move as a corporation, but once again, saving a couple dollars hurts the majority.
So he gets paid, starts off with a very handsome salary to begin with, and then gets paid more on an ongoing evaluation. Of course, they're not going to admit that the increase in pay has anything to do with the
Of course not.
Never.
Of course not.
constraint of payments, right?
No.
But I mean, that is interesting, because if he's supposed to be the independent arbiter, getting paid by one side or the other, regardless of which side, that's not. I mean, I don't. That the perception can't be that that's fair.
Exactly.
The argument from his end is that who else should pay it? Who else should pay his salary? I think what we've seen is that when you have a system like this, it's led to a lot of frustration. I think the results kind of speak for themselves. I think some people have been paid, and I don't think they are doing everything wrong. But I do think that things could be better, and I do think that there's a lot of people suffering in the Gulf that should be made whole that have not been.
So how do you gauge, let's say you're a business owner, Jay, in the Gulf Coast region, and let's say you're not on the beach, where I think that would be really easy to figure out. I'm on the beach, this happened, I got destroyed. Let's say you're off the beach. How do you figure out, hey, I've been injured here, I'm owed some form of compensation, who do I go to? And what do I ask for?
Well, it's simple. The original methodology we proposed was we took the last 3 years of average numbers. And I'll give you an example. If I grossed $40,000 in January, and then this year after the oil spill I only did 20, there's a $20,000 economic impact loss. And take into consideration the average increase in the country, and there's tons of data available. That's the most honest way to do it. We believe they realized under that methodology the payout was huge. And so they come up with their own methodology about taking like-kind properties that were not affected and then like-kind properties that may be affected and coming up with an average which really diminished the value of the payment by 80%. By 80%, based on what we projected our losses were and what they're paying out is 80% less. And that's just a methodology that they believe is the right methodology because it makes economic sense for BP. No disrespect to Ken, I've met with him more than a dozen times. He seems like a great fellow to have a beer with, but when it comes to paying out, he doesn't make all the decisions. You know, he has the ability to make decisions on small $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 claims, but the large claims, I believe, strongly believe, that BP still has a say-so in this matter, even though they've denied it. But the claims do not get paid. Anything above a certain amount are scrutinized, and decisions aren't made. They've been delayed, continuously delayed on these payments. And they know they're legitimate claims. Right. I mean, 2011 interim payments just started to come out this week. Here we are, December. We're 1 year behind. And they haven't paid anybody 2011 interim claims. Forget settlement. We're only talking what the actual damage, not based on what we think, based on what you think, they still haven't paid.
So of the $20 billion that they pledged to pay, how much has actually been paid out?
To date, the last update, I believe, was $5.5 billion.
So they're about a quarter of the way there.
Right.
And what is the process? So I'm a small business owner, and I don't think I need to hire an attorney. Do I just walk into Ken Feinberg's office and say, hey, I've been injured, give me some money? I mean, how do you do this?
Well, there's a process. You file a claim with the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. You can do it without an attorney. You can do it with an attorney. You can do it, with your own team of experts, or there's a system and there's a website you can go to and do that process.
And Ricky, so how difficult is the process? I mean, surely you guys are experts, but I mean, I would assume there are attorneys up and down the Gulf Coast who now, a couple of years into this, have a lot of expertise in going through this process.
Right. It's like a sliding scale. Initially, after the oil spill, when GCCF was put into place, it was very easy. I'll tell you that. There was a standard form. You put in your losses, and I believe they stated within 24 hours they were having checks just sent out. Now, I mean, it's a whole new ballgame because now we're dealing with, like Jay mentioned earlier, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Some of the things that we've had to deal with, I'll give you an example. They wanted letters from individuals that canceled their rooms. Now, Chip, I want you to think about the last time you canceled a room. Did you write them a nice little letter explaining why you canceled?
Can't remember the last time I canceled, but I mean, yeah.
So it's getting pretty complicated. Can the average person do it? Sure they can. The only thing is, you have to look at these claims almost like a business interruption claim, like an insurance claim. You're going to get denied. And if you do get through, it may not be the full amount. Now, as Wes stated, there are people that are getting paid the full amount. However, with our experience in this, they try to deny in the beginning in hopes that the people don't come back and feel like we stated earlier, it was just the economy or whatever else. What they want to do is they want to go ahead, they want to go to the website, the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. They want to look at all of the information, and they want to submit this information as soon as possible. The trial is getting ready to start in February of 2012. After that starts, it's not going to be as easy to be facilitated by the Gulf Coast Claims Facility.
So quickly, we have less than a minute to go. What is the time period that someone should...
keep in mind also that it's not just the Gulf Coast Claims Facility. That's not the only way someone can recover for their losses. There's also federal litigation that's based out of New Orleans. And the issue is when you're with just the claims facility and you're not represented by someone who can actually bring your claim to a court, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to be pursuing all avenues of recovery. The Gulf Coast Claims Facility is one avenue that we pursue for our clients, and we think it's worth exploring for anyone, but it is not the only one. And certainly, I think everyone should keep all their options open and understand that there is a litigation going on, and there's potentially an opportunity to make far more than what you're able to get from the Gulf Coast Claims Facility from the federal litigation. There's no guarantee of that, but it is another option, and it's one that does require, in most cases, an attorney.
We're out of time, but we got another show to talk about this
Okay.
because I want to follow up on that. And if you are interested in this, I hope you are. You'll have to join us in the next program. So for Ricky Patel and Wes Farrell, and of course Jay Patel, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us again this week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week to talk more about this BP oil spill and the impact it's having on the entire economy of the Gulf Coast region. I'm Chip Rogers for AAHOA. You can reach me, chip@ahoa.com. That's chip@ahoa.com. We'll see you again next week.